My dad took us fishing a lot. We water skied, and a lot of times there's a park right there.
Yeah, like where I lived, you could go right down the road to Ellis Park, and you could fish right off the road right there.
And that was the park that we would go swimming at when we were younger and hang out at. They had fireworks down there, you know, every year and right along the river.
There was a perfect spot. You could just pull your cart up and fish right there. And oh, I caught like an 8-pound catfish one day. That was pretty neat, pulling that in.
Yeah, and actually I went to middle school right down the road, and so all my friends growing up actually lived in this neighborhood, and so I grew up kind of down in here.
Breaking news this morning as more evacuations are ordered in Cedar Rapids, mandatory evacuations. We just received
People understand as we are dealing with a state of emergency across the entire state.
And I'm like, what is this? Evacuation? What are they talking about?
No one ever thought that it ever would get as high as it did.
Register at our telephone line at 1-800-621-FEMA or www.fema.gov.
Floods of 2008 are expected to be near or exceed a 500-year flood event. A 500-year flood event. If you remember on Monday,
If somebody would have told me that the river would have came 11 blocks up down here, I would have never, ever thought that.
And that's when it started to get serious. And they were talking about how, I think they were saying they were concerned it was going to be 19 feet.
because the city of Cedar Rapids has just expanded its mandatory evacuation. They're saying
Concerned
the
about
flooding they're
those
expecting.
who've lost their homes.
Even
lost their
when, you know,
businesses.
when you're watching the news, you know, as they were talking about it's going to get this high, and then 2 hours later it was going to get this high, they kept changing it. So, you know, the only thing that I remember is being evacuated from my house, watching the river come up street by street by street until eventually it was, you know, right in front of our house.
I don't know, I think they said 19 feet. And then it was 31 feet. So it wasn't even close to it was way worse than what they thought it was going to be.
In June of 2008, nearly all of Iowa's counties were declared disaster areas. At its height, the Cedar River covered 10 square miles of the city, far surpassing the 500-year floodplain.
There was no place to stay, there was no place to rent, there was no hotels.
The Red Cross came through and said anything that was touched by the floodwater had to go. You couldn't wash your clothes or, you know, so you piled everything on the street. And then they brought along these trucks that picked up all the garbage and took it away.
I don't know. I try not to dwell on it because I've come here too many nights. I pull in this driveway and I sit here and I cry. And I won't do that anymore.
You just drive through the streets and you just couldn't do anything but cry. So I knew a lot of people that live down here that have lost everything.
The water destroyed neighborhoods no one ever imagined could flood. In its path, the flood claimed the home of the Gilson family, leaving Christina, her 2 teenage daughters, and her young son with no place to call home.
You can't live in it the way it is, and if you remove the stuff that you have to replace, it's going to fall. So you just assume that it's going to be tore down. Yep.
While Shannon's home was not a complete loss, health risks of the flooded neighborhoods have made a move critical to her son Kobe's well-being.
He started to get really sick, quite sick, and had to be on steroids. So this has all just been since the flood. He started to have a lot of trouble with that.
2 months after the flood, Christina and her family were able to move into a temporary FEMA trailer. Neither family was left with a long-term solution.
Habitat is a program that helps people like me who have a job but just couldn't afford to save up money for a down payment or afford a larger mortgage. They kind of come in and help you out, and you still have a mortgage. You know, they help you build your house. I just hoped, you know, that actually I prayed a lot that I would get into this just for my son's sake.
Each time I went through another hurdle, you know, like an interview or a phone call or a letter, I just kept thinking, there's just no way this is happening, you know. And it just kept getting closer and closer, and before I knew it, I got this acceptance letter, and I about died. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Really? Is this happening?
I'm very excited. I'm going to have a house. I've never owned a house. He's never got to live in a house that we've actually owned.
It's so much happiness right now that I don't even want to believe it because I have to see it first. I mean, I know what I'm doing right now, and I know where it's going to lead, but it's been too crazy a year for me to actually believe it's happening yet. It's just too exciting. It's too happy. I just can't believe it's happening yet.